Adam, as always, good to talk to you this week.
Good to see you, Jeff. Thank you.
We have right now the positive cases is 319, 46 deaths in Arlington due to COVID-19. We seem to have plateaued. We've talked about this in previous weeks, but some medical leaders, given what's happening statewide now, are saying we should revert back to phase 2 because the numbers are rising statewide, not necessarily in Arlington.
So I would definitely not put myself in the category of being expert enough to know if the governor should decide to go back to phase 2. But I'll admit I have my own feelings of hesitance. I mean, I think you and I have kind of had the same trend talking every Monday where, my feeling is that we're not out of the woods. We're still seeing some limited community transmission in Arlington. We're certainly seeing community transition in the state. And, we don't have to look too far to some of these other states to see what's happening. And I mean, I guess I hedge towards preferring a more cautious path. I mean, I was talking with a few folks this morning and we said, really, if we went to a total lockdown for 4 more weeks, we could probably snuff this thing out. But it's just the balance between public health and economic health, which are both important. Right. But yeah, I think we're in a time where I'm very interested to see over the next couple of weeks how the numbers go and what the governor's reaction is. Because if he was asking me, he's not asking me, but if he was asking me, I'd rather he act fast than wait till it's too late. I'd rather him take what might feel in the moment like preemptive action, so that we don't end up on an upswing again any earlier than we need to be.
And medical professionals, and you have also in recent weeks said, look, if it seems like it's going to go high, or at least start going in that direction, we will always pull back on these phases. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the month of August. In other news, we had a Black Lives Matter banner, We Believe in Black Lives Matter banner in front of Arlington High, vandalized, according to Arlington police. What have you heard?
So it was actually one of the select board members who called me at 7:40 a.m. The morning that we found it. I think that was Thursday morning, to tell me that she was driving by with one of her parents and saw it. So I quickly talked to the school superintendent and the facilities director to have it taken down to see whether or not we could have it repaired, and if not repaired, replaced. I haven't heard anything further from the investigation. I know they were looking into whether or not any cameras in the surrounding area might have picked up who did it. But I will say, I try to repeat the quote that I put into the press release, that I really just hope whoever did it, if they're listening, if they're reading the press release, that they just think about the hurtful nature of their actions. That, so many of us are trying to foster an enhanced sense of welcomeness and inclusivity in the community, and that actions like that just really go a long way to claw us back away from moving along that spectrum of becoming more welcoming. And then the second thing I'd say is, please read and educate yourself from objective sources. For the moment, for the time being, please, no offense, Jeff, let's not tune into the latest news media that's being aired. Let's educate ourselves from history, from reading well-researched, sometimes in-depth, it needs to be in-depth research on these issues. And I think when you do that, when you educate yourself on the history of our nation and the racialized nature of just about all of our institutions, it's really hard to not understand the need to say loud and clear that Black Lives Matter. And that when you say Black Lives Matter, you're not saying that you don't believe that all lives matter, or that you're prioritizing Black lives over other lives. In fact, what you're saying, or at least what I'm saying, is let's try to get on equal footing. Let's try to value Black lives at the same level that other lives are valued at in this nation. And again, you don't have to dig too deep to look at the history of our, the history of the use of force by police in this nation in a disproportionate manner, our housing policy, our zoning policies, our economic policies. They're all pretty plain to see that they've disadvantaged people of color in our nation for a long time. So to say Black Lives Matter is to say enough is enough. Let's fix things.
Yeah, you're bringing up a very good point. In the midst of this interview, as we speak, the body of John Lewis of Georgia is lying in state at the U.S. Capitol right now in Washington, and there's a man who faced a lot of violence in the face of police at the Edmund Pettus Bridge and other
Yes.
marches, arrested dozens of times. I believe his saying was good trouble, make good trouble.
Yes, yeah, make good trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you bring up a very good point. So have you replaced the sign, or are you going to be replacing that sign?
You know, I'd have to talk more with the superintendent. I believe the plan is to. I don't think they've fabricated it yet, but I believe the plan is to replace it.
All right. Now, talking about civil rights and everything else, we've had these community conversations, virtual community conversations, which have really been good, stirred up a lot of facts that people can research and get to know what's happening in our society a little bit better. You're going to be having in the beginning of August 4th, I believe, Closing the Circle, where you're going to have Lieutenant Rick Pedrini basically apologizing and admitting some of the negative impacts he has had, and his statements have had, I should say, on the community. How exactly is that going to be set up? Are you still working that out?
So we're still working it out. We believe we're going to have it facilitated by Michael Curry, who's the former president of the Boston chapter of the NAACP. So what we'll do is we'll air Lieutenant Pedrini's apology. We'll then have a dialogue between Lieutenant Pedrini and Michael Curry. And the details we're still trying to work out are whether or not we'll allow a few direct questions from the public, or if we're going to put together what has been called a reaction panel for members of the public to react, comment, and talk about what they heard from Lieutenant Pedrini. So we're still ironing that out over the course of this week, but hopefully in just the next few days, we'll be able to say with some definitiveness about how it will actually play out on the 4th.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing how that's going to play itself out. Some residents have already expressed dissatisfaction, I should say, in the fact that it will be virtual. It will not be face-to-face, where obviously it's more impactful. It's part of the human condition. However, we are in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say much more than that, that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and calling people together. Not only would it violate the governor's order on gatherings, but it would be unsafe for those involved. So that's just a non-starter.
All right, and we're 5 to 6 weeks away from the first day of school. They had a school committee meeting last week, September 8th. What are you hearing? And I'm sure a lot of details have to be worked out. Some proposals have been put forth that maybe 2 days on in the classroom, 2 days off at home, and another day at home to take care of anything that needs to be taken care of that week. What are you hearing?
Well, I think the thing I'm hearing first and foremost is that the superintendent and her team are working literally day, nights, and weekends on the various plans and considerations to bring forth to the school committee. There is no definitive decisions that have been made yet. And I think they're balancing everything you just mentioned. How do we pull together a plan that does the best by the students, but keeps everybody safe and healthy? And I think the ultimate is there is no good answer, right? That we're in a very challenging time, and there is no perfect answer. Kids going into the classrooms will certainly be experiencing a heightened level of risk as compared to a normal time. Teachers as well. Parents will have the stresses of either continuing to need to homeschool or having a staggered schedule or whatever it might be at school while trying to balance their professional obligations. And we're hopeful. I think parents are hopeful. The school employees, leadership is hopeful that in the next 2 weeks we'll have a more clear picture. But we're in this world where there's no good decisions. I think there's just least bad decisions to be made.
Until a vaccine can be found, I think it's just going to be touch and go. It's amazing. Last question. I was reading earlier this week from yourarlington.com an article about the Arlington Town Manager's Gas Leaks Task Force, where you're providing a number of unrepaired gas leaks in town, over 300 at the end of 2018, which I believe was the last time they took statistics like that. Obviously, it's concerning. I've talked to a number of residents who can sometimes smell it. And obviously, we don't want another repeat of what's happened in the Merrimack Valley. So give us an update on what's happening with that.
So this is a group that's been meeting for a couple of years now, a great group of people, a mix of town staff, the tree warden and the assistant town engineer, as well as residents, mostly representatives from Mothers Out Front, the local advocacy organization. And we both worked locally and worked with a regional group, the Multi-Town Gas Leaks Initiative. Locally, we've really focused a lot of our efforts on enabling our tree warden to test tree planting pits so that we're not planting trees where there's gas leaks, which will thereby kill the freshly planted tree. So that's much of our local effort. Then that team locally has branched out and worked with the regional effort to try to advocate for change both directly with National Grid and on issues that we're not really satisfied with National Grid's actions to advocate to the state legislature for change. And a couple of the highlights are advocating for really asking the legislature to put together a plan to move away from natural gas into cleaner heat, to electric heat pump sourced heat, or geothermal or ground source heating, which is one avenue we've taken. We have pushed on National Grid to better coordinate with cities and towns around their leak fixing and to speed up the rate of their leak fixing so that we can reduce the negative environmental impacts of the gas leaks. And we're working both locally and regionally on the tree issue, because our urban tree canopy is so important to both the environmental health and really the personal health of people living in our neighborhoods. So wanting to make sure that gas leaks are not killing trees has been an effort that we've again looked at both locally and regionally. And fortunately, Arlington has been looked at as a case study on at least initial efforts that can be made to try to do better in terms of preserving your urban canopy.
All right. Well, you have a busy week ahead of you and a busy week next week as well. So we'll be talking to you obviously next week on what's going on from the town manager of Arlington. Adam, always good to talk to you.
Same here. Thank you, Jeff.